Having the right TMS is vital in supporting freight broker growth. Partner with TIE software to optimize your processes and compete with confidence. Get into the automation, data insights, and cash flow optimization game. Request a demo at tiesoftware.com. Welcome back to another edition of Chat Call. Today we are covering the history of freight brokers and 3PLs. And we are joined by our resident history expert here at FreightWaves. Once again, we have got her to come back on the show, our FreightWaves deputy editor and host of Tracks Through Time, Brielle Jekyll. Welcome back to the show, Brielle.
Hi.
For those who do not know, Brielle hosts a show called Tracks Through Time, where I am very frequently on as a co-host, guest, whatever we feel like calling it that day. And so we usually tell stories of things throughout supply chain history. And today we are not making you watch episodes of Yesteryear. We are just telling you a story of Yesteryear. And we're going to take a page out of your book, travel back in time to the creation of a freight brokerage. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready. Let's go.
So we don't exactly know when the first freight broker existed. It could be back in yesteryear of like, something's coming up a shift, I need to move it. Hey, I know a guy, he'll move it for you. It's just going to cost you a little bit extra and I take a little money off the top. It could be that. According to some guy on Reddit, it probably happened in medieval times for that very same reason of a ship came in and goods need to get moved. He said, I know a guy, take a little off the top, broker a deal, etc. However, I don't trust Reddit for historical accuracy. So I'm just going to say mostly the 1980s is when freight brokers came to be, because it just seems right, you know? So let's get into it. Why the 80s? Great question. Let me tell you. Before 1980s, the trucking industry was highly regulated, as we all pretty much know. The government set the shipping rates through the Motor Carrier Act. These rates ensured that carriers could often deadhead back to their starting point, so they would drive something out and drive empty on the way back. First, in 1978, there was the Airline Deregulation Act signed by President Jimmy Carter. It removed the government oversight of airline fares and routes, which was previously regulated by the Civil Aeronautics Board. One thing led to another, and the freight industry was like, we should do that too. Hence, the Motor Carrier Act of 1980 was born. I feel like there should be like a sound effect or something. Moving on. The Motor Carrier Act of 1980 deregulated the trucking industry. So this is where you ask someone like, why is trucking so fragmented or whatever, pretty much any time that someone's complaining about transportation, the Motor Carrier Act of 1980 comes up. It is what it is. Everybody has strong feelings about it, but we're going to get into that a different day. But basically this act allowed for more flexibility in pricing. The Interstate Commerce Commission had previously set rates based on factors of distance, weight, commodity type, etc. Kind of what we base our rates on today, but it's just not regulated by anyone. Before the Motor Carrier Act, there were a lot of times that you couldn't do backhaul, so you would only get paid to go one way and you'd drive empty, which, as we know, not great for keeping your truck full and loaded and running and making the most money. But during the 70s, before the Motor Carrier Act, a lot of people believed that the competition between carriers and rates and everything like that was being strangled by the ICC, and that freight rates were too high because the industry was so regulated. So that's kind of the gist as to why the Motor Carrier Act of 1980 came in and deregulated everything, which, you know, I like it. I like that people could have gotten paid a little bit more, but also for the sake of shippers and keeping costs low, we love a good free market, you know? So with the deregulation of the freight brokerage industry emerged, they connected shippers and carriers negotiating competitive rates based on markets. Of the 18,000 trucking companies in existence at that time, many went out of business in this kind of new environment where you kind of had to be a little more competitive, have a stronger pricing model. That's kind of where what we know today has been created. So Despite a lot of the 18,000 that went out of business, there were thousands of new trucking companies that were started as a result of the kind of lower barrier to entry and other things like that. So even though it cost a lot of people their companies and everything like that, it promoted a lot of new commerce, which, we love to see success. We just love to see it. So the results of all of this new competition in the market increased the use of backhauls. So now we suddenly have the option to say, okay, well, if you're starting in St. Louis and you're going to Chicago, you don't have to just drive back to St. Louis. You can get a load in Chicago and take it back to St. Louis or Little Rock or wherever you're trying to go. So that way you're not driving empty miles, which from a sustainability perspective, we love, because as we know, higher empty miles, it's going to be a problem. You're going to have more emissions. You're going to waste more money. And I honestly don't know many carriers in this day and age that would not try to get a backhaul or something that resembles a backhaul for their loads, because it's just, it's kind of a waste of time and money to not have a backhaul option. So we love that for them. So as a result of this need for kind of more access to loads and knowing what's in the world, Dial a Truck, aka DAT, was born or came into existence. They came in 1978, so 2 years before the Motor Carrier Act. Dial a Truck, or DAT, would display available loads on TV screens at truck stops, and kind of the early modern day load board, which we know that there's a lot of hot water about load boards now, but back in 1970s, there was not as much double brokering fraud. So, we take what we can get. We take the wins where we can get them. And as the economy grew and, the freight broker industry increased, it pretty much led DAT to get a foothold in load boards and being the number one source for carriers to, find some new loads and kind of keep their trucks moving and keep working. So that brings us, so we got the history part of kind of what prompted this. That brings us to the first freight brokerage. I mean, I'm sure there are more, but the first one of note is American Backhaulers. And so that began operations in 1981. And it was started by Paul Loeb and Jeff Silver. And they kind of are the grandfathers of the freight broker industry and moved it forward. And eventually American Backhaulers was acquired by C.H. Robinson in 1999. So about for a casual $100 million. So love that for them. Who doesn't want to sell for $100 million and take that chunk of change?
Which I wonder what would be today.
Oh, almost $1 billion. Okay, well, that would be nice. I would not mind that. But, I'm a little late to start American Backhaulers. So the post-deregulation world, the motor carriers began to operate kind of wherever they could find profitable freight. Rates were lower because of increased competition. So that's where that pricing structure of, really knowing where you need to be to run a profit really came in handy. So many carriers needed those backhaul freight to generate enough money on round trip revenue. So if you knew that you were coming in low to beat other people, but you weren't necessarily going to have enough funds to cover the lane back, just call yourself a freight broker. They'll get your backhaul lane. So as a result of that, instead of sitting there trying to hunt for different loads on load boards and everything like that, a large number of carriers actually started their own in-house brokerage divisions. So that's kind of what we see a lot of carriers today. These in-house brokerages gave additional revenue streams. So not only is it keeping their trucks running and securing freight for them, they're able to take that margin that they get as a freight broker, but with their own carriers, they're able to take that margin, obviously add it to the bottom line, which, as anyone knows, any revenue is not necessarily a bad thing. So they also, it kind of created this demand that was controlled by the trucking companies. And they kind of, it's that nice asset-based situation where you have the trucks that can cover your freight, and any excess capacity, you'll just source out to whoever you can get to cover the load. And so it was kind of a nice gig, because that way you knew that all of your carriers were going to be running and they had everywhere to go. And then you could make some extra money selling it to, other carriers or friend of a friend of a friend of carriers. So, and then, so now we're in the year 2000. Freight brokers was kind of like considered like a cottage industry. It was kind of small. It was just a small percentage of the trucking industry. It was about 6%. And so then if you look at it today, freight brokers handle more than 20% of all freight in like the country. So needless to say, in about 23 years, it grew significantly. So as a result of this huge increased growth, freight brokers invested in technology and customer service. And then we have the 3PL situation that comes in, and there's that value add, and kind of, it really comes down to customer service versus just, yeah, I'll take that load and make sure it gets moved for you. So we, as people who service customers, we love to see it. We love to see customers getting more, getting that value add that they want, and really kind of getting the most bang for their buck versus just getting their freight moved, because the stronger your customers are, the stronger you can be. And it's a nice synergy, if you will. And so, and today it's very common for multiple freight brokerages to be like the number one in shippers routing guides. I mean, you have it with your managed transportation services. You have it with, I just give all this to a broker and call it good. It's pretty common for that to be the top choice. And they even beat out some of the asset-based competitors, which is why, again, a lot of those asset-based carriers, they do have their own brokerage just because it's easier to kind of get your foot in the door and, take over a large percentage of that shipper's freight. So that's kind of how we got to where we are today. But in case you're wondering what happened to the original guys who started American backhaulers, the 80s wasn't that long ago. So they're still hanging out, doing things in the trucking world. Loeb and Silver, they went on to create their own separate companies. So Loeb founded Command Transportation, which was sold to Echo Global Logistics in 2015. Silver founded, along with his wife Marianne, they founded Coyote Logistics, which was acquired by UPS for casual $1.8 billion. They're doing pretty good. And then their sons, as we all know them, Andrew and Matt, Andrew co-founded Molo, which was recently purchased by ArcBest, and Matt founded Forager Logistics, which was a cross-border company, which was acquired by Arrive Logistics in 2022. So needless to say, freight brokerage is kind of in their blood. And then also Loeb and Silver, I think they got together 2 or 3 years ago and created another transportation company to do what they want to do with. So I think they're doing pretty all right. I want to say that the OGs of freight brokers are doing pretty good with their lives.
They've made a lot of contributions to the industry,
They have. And it kind of like on one side of the coin, I'm curious as to what it would have looked like without that kind of resource. But I feel like if they didn't start it, someone else would have, because it's just that demand was there. That hole needed to be filled. They're just the ones who obviously created a business and made a fair penny off of it, which, man, if only I was around in the 80s to do that. But oh well. So that is the brief history of freight brokers. And that's what I have for you today, Brielle. Do you have any fun facts?
I do. I will say that the difference in freight brokerage in yesteryear versus today is wild, because I'm not only a resident history nerd, but I'm also, my main job is making sure everything on the site is good. So I have to moderate a lot of the comments. Boy, is that polarized on the site about how people feel about brokerages. And it is amazing.
One of my favorite things to do is like when you look up a freight brokerage, because obviously like I'll get something and look them up to see kind of what they specialize in and etc. Is whenever you Google one, their Google reviews come up. And honestly, I will get a kick out of reading the 1-star reviews, just because I've worked at freight brokerages. I know that it's just an angry carrier or something didn't go right. I know a lot of the backstories on it. But I do love reading the 1-star reviews, which I'm sure most brokerages are very unhappy that they have a 1-star review. I know that we went on a huge campaign of like getting more positive reviews when we had a couple of them, but it is one of my favorite things to do is read them, just because I know the story that has to be there, and it tickles. It makes me giggle.
Yeah, I love it. And especially with yellow, it's like half the people are like, all the yellow stories, the comments are just wild about whose fault it is, and it's crazy.
That one, I feel like years from now, you'd have to do like a deep dive postmortem on what happened there, because It's just a lot. But that's a different story for a different day.
Yeah, I would like to do a deep dive into that, and like in years in the future when like everything comes out. But we've done, yeah,
Yeah.
about with the info we have now.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of yellow coverage on freightwaves.com in case
Oh
you're
yeah,
wondering.
check it out.
But
Read those comments too; they're great.
honestly, our comment section is some of my favorite things, especially on some of like the spicier articles. People have very hot takes. Actually, where I got some of this information from was Craig Fuller's article that came out like a month or two ago about like the freight brokers and the rise and kind of the market where it is. Those Craig's articles always have some of the spiciest comments.
Oh, I know. Oh, they're so. Some of them are so. And I love approving comments that are like FreightWaves will never let this comment see the light of day. I'm like, it's only because I like it's the middle of the night and I'm not approving comments at 1 a.m. Like,
Like I have to sleep, guys.
but anyway, I have some fun facts for you. Less freight brokerage, more freight. You know.
I love it. I love it. I pretty much any fun fact I'm on board for.
So the logistics name uh, was actually originally associated with the transportation of soldiers, and it comes from the French word logis- logistique. Logistique.
Okay.
I'm so bad at French.
Logistique.
Logistique.
So basically, we owe logistics to the word logistics to the transportation of soldiers. That's, I
Yes.
mean, very important during war.
And this comes from Translogistic Inc. And they have a couple of fun facts here that I found. Within the United States, 9 million people's primary source of income is related to the logistics industry.
How many? What percentage?
9 million.
That's a lot of people. But I mean, I guess you have everyone from like your dock workers to your warehouse workers to people like us to freight brokers to shippers. That's a that's actually a pretty impressive number.
For reference, there are currently 331.9 million citizens of the United States as of 2021.
Maybe that number should be higher, you know?
Yeah.
Huh.
Well,
Anyway, there's a bunch of different industries.
3.5 million of them are truck drivers.
Okay, so like a third of that makes sense. About a third of everything is truck drivers. We love our truck drivers.
And the most common commodities hauled are food, electronics, and furniture.
I'd believe that. Food's pretty popular when people got to eat. You know, you got to get food to, I mean, it's not like they're growing food in the desert.
Also, while there's that debate over whether we need freight brokers anymore, they say some research says that the demand for freight brokerage is becoming more prevalent because of the demand for online shopping. But other people feel that's not true. So that's debatable.
I think this is something that that Grace and I have talked about at length, and it's something that, you know, I think that there will always be a role for freight brokers. I just think their role might change and kind of deviate. I think it would morph more into kind of that like traditional 3PL vibe where you're doing like you're managing logistics, you're managing transportation, and like you're managing things for your customers instead of strictly just brokering freight like one for one. I think it's going to become more of like a value add industry versus the traditional like you have a load, I'm going to get it, and I'm going to get someone to do it for me.
Yeah, well, like digital freight networks have become super super popular, and I think this is a huge point in all industries, but especially in supply chain and logistics is kind of updating with the times. I mean, we're in a world right now that's so completely different from when this industry. I'm not saying anything new, but you know, it's like the invention of the car. You know, that wasn't a passing fad. It fundamentally changed our way of life, and the internet and AI and things that are coming out after this is fundamentally changing the way we live our lives. So that it means that these things are not, they have to be updated. And I know there's a case for both. You know, sometimes doing it the old ways is great, but it's just really important that we update and we kind of, you know, streamline to gauge with the times. I mean, we live in a completely different world than even just 10 years ago.
It's something that I have said long since, been shouting from any rooftop, and what a way than to bring it up again now. Stop running your supply chains on Excel.
Right. Oh my God. Right.
That is all. Stop running your supply chains on Excel. Get an ERP system. Do something. Be better. We are in the 21st century. You can get a TMS set up in like 3 days. Stop running your supply chain on Excel.
I mean, for sure. That's totally. I mean,
And
even
if you
just
have a dot matrix printer, just burn it.
even if, like, let's say, like, I'm just doing a research piece when I have, online tools at my disposal, AI, all this stuff, and I'm using that to help fund my research.
Well, hold on. Let me pull out all my Encyclopedia Britannicas.
Yeah, versus, and I'm
90s.
competing against somebody without those tools. Like that person's you could be so much more talented than me, and that's not.
Yeah,
I'm going to be way far ahead of you because it's just a different time.
That's one of the things that it's not how is AI going to do your job? How is someone who is willing to embrace and utilize AI going to do your job and outperform?
Exactly.
So. But anyway, we have an unhinged question for you today, since we hit you rapid fire with a bunch of them, and it's not check call without a fun question. So, Brielle, if you could have any superpower, but it only worked on Wednesdays, what would it be?
Okay, I like this one. This one is an okay unhinged question. It makes sense. There's a thought process I can have. There are points that I can make.
Right.
Versus is cereal soup. So because I can only use it on Wednesday, that means I'm not a superhero. So that does not mean I'm saving the world.
Right. I mean, unless you want to like put on your spider suit and like go around and save the world on just Wednesdays. But like if I was a criminal, I just wouldn't do my crime on Wednesdays.
Exactly. Too easy. So I'm going to use it to make my life more convenient. And I'm just going to go with you. Oh my God. I've been watching so much. Okay. So I just came back from Universal and I was at Harry Potter with the Wizarding World the whole week. And I've only been watching, and I can only think of apparate as the word, which is not what regular people say for that. And you even recently said the word. I don't know what it is. What am I thinking of?
Teleportation.
Thank you. I would teleport.
Okay. I like that. That's a pretty good one. Because I mean, you could do all your errands on one day if you could just teleport around town.
100%.
Like groceries. Okay. So question, if you could teleport into a grocery store, does that mean you have to like pay for your groceries?
No, I would somehow make that part of my, because I can teleport out and you wouldn't see me. You can't catch me. So you have to be willing to steal.
Or just like run your errands and then after you check out, teleport out.
Yeah, sure.
Does that mean you can just teleport to the front of like the line?
Oh, I would. People in front of me would be like, what?
I love that. Just
be like, I've been here the whole time. Do you need to see somebody?
People want to come up with great places to teleport to. Where can they find you outside the show?
Oh, me? At Jekyll Brielle at Twitter. And bjekyll at FreightWaves.com.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem.
You can find Check Call the Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves podcasts, such as Rethinking, Reshoring, and Tracks Through Time. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.